All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first day of the semester, probably first day of the program for most of you. I'm Jason Breyer. I also have on here Angela Louie. So depending on which section you're in, if you're in section 1, you got my name attached to it. If you're in section 2, you got Angela's name. But we're really going to tackle this kind of as a team, in part because I think this is my 7th year teaching this course. I was an adjunct for 5 years and then became full-time tenure track in the program last year. So I'm really excited to have Angela kind of take over, and I'll actually go into in a moment the reason why. But yeah, welcome to the statistics course. And so it was asked whether statistics computer science is more welcoming. I hope to kind of contribute to the side of statistics being welcoming, and that's our goal here. So our goal for tonight is really just to kind of go over the course and get you started in working with the course material and working on the first lab. You won't have a lab due this week, but we got a couple of other kind of smaller assignments just to kind of start slow. I will admit this course will ramp up pretty quickly because we're going to go through a lot of topics in a very short amount of time. It's going to be probably your only pure stats course in the program. You'll do stats, of course, throughout, but I want to give you a good foundation so when you get into some of the more advanced machine learning stuff and predictive modeling stuff, that you have a good background here. So we're going to start. I'll talk a little bit about myself. Angela will talk a little bit about herself, and then we'll go into the syllabus and the course outline. Sort of some ground rules. Feel free to throw questions into the chat. If you feel comfortable unmuting yourself, feel free to do that. I don't mind being interrupted at all. I'd rather you ask your clarifying questions as they come up. I'm glad to see, it looks like most people are making it live. For those who are not live, welcome in the recording. Sort of do expect you to either come live or watch the recording. If you can make it live, I think you'll find it valuable because you can actually ask the questions. If you watch the recording, you're just going to yell at your screen, and that's not quite as helpful, I think. But yeah, feel free to do that at any time. So let me start with myself. So as I mentioned, last year, I came on as assistant professor, full-time assistant professor in the program, and also associate director. So if you know anything about higher ed, I'm what's called a 3-3 load, meaning my schedule or my workload is kind of set up as teach 3 courses in the fall, 3 courses in the spring. But because I have an administrative side, I've been 2/3 teaching, 1/3 administrative, which was great last year. So I taught both sections, but we just found out, I think in May of this year, I got a $3.8 million grant from the Department of Ed called DAX. So that starts up. So that's actually going to be 1/3 of my time is managing that grant. I have 2 co-PIs, one at the University of Albany and one at Rutgers University. And I'll talk about that in a little bit because I'm actually going to have you do a little bit of that. And then we're going to use data from DAX next week when we start talking about statistical topics. Angela, or Dr. Angela Louie, I am technically Dr. Breyer, but Jason is fine. Angela can decide whether or not she's Angela or Dr. Louie.
Angela's fine here.
She's going to be the project manager on the DAX grant. And actually we have David Franklin on. Not yet, doctor. He tells me his dissertation is almost done. I happen to be on his committee as well, kind of sitting in. He's going to be a research analyst on the project. So, you can ask questions of him as well. How I got involved in data science. So I mentioned my doctorate's actually in educational psychology and methodology. My dissertation was actually on charter schools and traditional public schools. I'll make references as examples and as we go through the course. However, my dissertation really kind of focused on developing a new method for doing quasi-experimental designs. And so a lot of my methodological or statistical research revolves around quasi-experimental designs and how you determine causality when you can't actually randomize. particularly around propensity score analysis, which is what I have here. And so I've developed, 3R packages to kind of do extensions of that kind of methodology. But I've written many, many other R packages, including the Likert, which is probably one of the more common ones. I'll show that, I think, in 2 weeks when we talk about data visualization. It's kind of a way of visualizing data where you have Likert response. SQL utils is one I think you might want to take a look at, particularly if you're in 607, if you're doing some SQL queries in that course, or I think there's a later data management course. It's kind of a package to help you manage, large libraries of SQL queries to get data into R. I am also still a consultant. Prior to coming to CUNY, I worked for Cornell University, where I developed a dashboard and did data analysis for a project sponsored by the New York State's Office of Special Education, where we're looking at how schools around New York State kind of adhere to special ed requirements and the like. And so this link will work. It's a Shiny app, but a lot of it's password protected now, unfortunately. So anyways, there's a video I can share that I did of a talk last semester. If you're interested in Shiny, I'll use Shiny quite a lot because it's a nice way to kind of do interactive apps. But beyond that, I'm a proud dad of three boys. So here's a relatively recent picture. I'm also an avid runner. I've done 5 marathons. I've got number 6 in October and 7 in January, hopefully, if I don't hurt myself. I did do New York City in 2019, the last time it ran. I'm a little disappointed I can't do it this year. And I'm also a photographer. My wife and I do like wedding photography together. I am based, and as is Angela, we live in Albany, so we're upstate New York, so we're not in New York City. So there's a screenshot, or kind of a photo I took of Albany, the capital. And I'm going to pass it off to Angela so she can tell you a little bit about her background.
Thank you, Jason. So my name is Angela, and I actually come from an ed psych and stats background. And admittedly, I have little knowledge on data science and computer science, but I'm learning, and I hope to learn from all of you a lot more about that. My background started with NYU, where I majored in education and psychology, followed by educational psychology at Hunter. And I got my PhD at the University at Albany in educational psychology and methodology with some emphasis on statistics. And then I'm currently a postdoc at Rutgers, but as of next week, I will be that DAX project manager, a part of CUNY SPS. And my teaching experience varies in terms of topic areas, including statistics, measurement, motivation, introduction to, educational psychology in just in general and in adolescent development. And some fun facts about myself. I own a house with a yellow door to your left, but I actually live on a farm on the right with my chosen family, and I love it there. And there I help to take care of these chickens and a cat named Leo, and it's a lot of fun. Just very quickly, my dissertation topic is about students' responses to feedback. I won't get into this at all right now, but if you're interested, I'd be very happy to share some information about this, especially because it relates to teaching and learning, right? And course and all of that. How are your chickens? Do they poop all the time, Mauricio?
Oh, you're muted.
They're actually the neighbors' chickens.
Oh.
There's a tradition here of cockfighting and men keeping chickens. So you hear them.
I'm curious, where do you live?
Yep.
I'm based in Indonesia, in Bali.
Oh, no way.
Oh, nice.
I was wondering if anyone in New York City. So Albany passed. You can have chickens in the city of Albany now, and my wife wants some.
But actually, I was raised and educated in New York City, so CUNY is a bit of a homecoming for me.
Nice, yeah.
Nice, awesome. All right, and to end my introduction, I wanted to share with you the 3 pillars of my teaching philosophy, and it was very nice to see that the teaching philosophy that I have closely aligns with how Jason developed this course. So I'd like to actually say that this is our teaching philosophy, but Jason can disagree. The first one is to cultivate a respectful culture of teaching, learning, and assessment. And the second one is to use various forms of formative assessment and feedback to promote learning. And you'll see that that's where assignments like the labs, homework, and 1-minute notes would come in. And that's how we would use what we will use to promote learning. And the third one is to learn from each other, learn from and support each other's knowledge and skill development. And that's where Slack comes in. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Jason again.
Great. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you'll see bits of that throughout the course. So hopefully you all found, I know some of you went to the orientation last night, and I kind of shared the link to the course website. So going over here to the course website. So as I quickly mentioned last night, like this is going to be the repository for where I'm going to put material. We have the link to Blackboard. I put it on the course website. Of course, there's 2 sections. You're only going to have obviously access to one section. Blackboard's going to be used really predominantly for just submitting assignments, right? And then you'll find all of the assignments here. What you'll find is as this course kind of builds up, and in the last meetup, I'll actually show you how you can download an archive of all the course material, so you can kind of save it on your computer and have it as a reference as you go forward. I really emphasize the use of open educational resources wherever possible, to keep costs down, but also to keep things current. I think so where the textbook we're using, I actually think it's quite good. The new edition, I think, is really fantastic. They kind of made a lot of new enhancements that made it even better. So I think it's really one of the leading stats textbooks. It is technically an undergraduate book, where I kind of take it different. I think it's fairly approachable. It's actually an undergrad textbook that would be covered in 2 semesters. So we're going to cover it in 1 semester. So that's where things are going to be a little bit different at this level. Is we're going to kind of go through a lot of this material, and some of the early material is probably review for some of you, but I imagine for a lot, it would be a welcome review to kind of get started. So the homepage is really going to be where we'll put announcements, and we'll also put the recordings for the meetup. So probably by tomorrow morning, you'll see an embedded video and a link to the slides right here on the homepage. You can do that. Under the syllabus, right, I would encourage you to kind of go through this and look at, basically everything you should need to know about the course is on this website. It's iterated over many, many years. But the kind of pages I want to focus on right now is, this meetups page. I put the link at the top because you're going to be on this page basically every Wednesday and maybe every Thursday, because I'll also have a link to the page where you can get the resources. A couple of things to note here. I noticed some of you have your video on. I love it when you have your video on. I feel like I'm talking to someone other than a Black Void, but this will be recorded, and it's kind of a private link embedded on here. So if you have your video on, you are in the recording. So I have the disclaimer that CUNY provides. So if you're comfortable with that, great, but I do not in any way require it. As I mentioned before, we cannot really require attendance to these meetups, but students who attend all the meetups, there is a correlation, and we'll talk about correlation between attending the meetups, watching the videos, and your course grade. If you come to the meetups, you will probably do very well, because we are going to highlight what we think is really important in terms of course material, and kind of give you hints to get through the labs, which is probably going to be one of the pieces that will occupy the most of your time for this course. So starting next week, kind of leading into Angela's feedback, one thing we're going to use is something called a 1-minute paper. And I'll try to remind everyone every week. I use this in a couple different ways. So it's really important to complete it, whether you attend live or watch a recording. This goes to, I thought I opened it in a new window. Here it is. Oh, so that's the presentation. I clicked the wrong link. Sorry. 1-minute paper is what I meant to click. All right. So this is just a Google form that you can complete each week. And it's really about two major questions is what was the most important thing you learned from the class or meetup, and what important questions remain unanswered. And so we're going to go through this. I actually have a little script too that we can look at some keywords and what are trends kind of anonymously. And I'm still going to do this question because I like to try to monitor how much time you're spending on this course. I don't mean to completely overwhelm you. I'm trying to still find a balance, and we're trying to figure this out. So if you can give an approximate answer here, that would be helpful. So we're going to, starting next week, at the end of each meetup, we want you to complete that. And then beginning on September 8th, you're going to have to do one homework presentation sometime during the semester. It needs to be less than 5 minutes. You can pick any odd question from the textbook. Oops. And so there's a Google Sheet here that you should be able to edit. So you can sign up. If you know a particular week is better, you can just put your name in. But I encourage you to put the problem number so that we don't get duplicate responses. And you can see starting on September 8th, you can pick any question from chapter 1. On 15th is any question from chapter 2, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we get down to the last 2 weeks, you can do any question in the book that hasn't already been done. So keep that to odd questions. Just a hint, the answers to the odd questions are in the back of the book. So it would be good to check your answer. But the idea is I want you to kind of show how you do it. Whether you use R, if you do pen and paper, whatever, less than 5 minutes, shorter the better. And it's sort of graded as you do it or you don't. Okay, so that's another big piece. So what else do I have on here? Okay, so, and I'll go into this later if you're interested. Like I said, I try to use the tools of the trade. So the whole course website, this whole website was built using R and a package called Blogdown in R. Happy to talk about that. Oops, at some other later time. And I forgot to turn off the scrolling with the trackpad. What else? Talked about that. Okay, so submitting assignments. Blackboard will not allow you to upload HTML files, which is going to be sort of the default way that our Markdown and RStudio will want to build. Now, I did configure the labs that they should try to build to PDF, and that you can upload to Blackboard without any issues. And so to do that, you're going to need to install something called LaTeX. And there's a couple of I can show you on the course website, there's a software page with links to download. You're going to want to download R and then RStudio. And if you're on Windows, you need to install this thing called RTools. Just install it and forget it. And possibly Active Perl. I usually recommend doing that. Some packages will use Perl under the covers, and there's no native Perl available for Windows. And then this is the LaTeX part. So I'm not going to talk too much about what LaTeX is, but it just needs to be available to go from our Markdown to a PDF. Everything's on GitHub. Someone asked last night. You're not going to need to use GitHub for this course, but if you find some time to start to play around with it, it would be a good idea, because some of the later courses and even the capstone, you're probably going to put your capstone project in a GitHub repo, and so getting started early would be a good idea. If you're new to R, you can just cut and paste these commands into R Studio and do that. But the first lab is really going to try to introduce you to do that. Now, the bulk of the assignments. So I'll get to your question in just a second. So a lot of the stuff is actually in this package called Data 606, and I can actually just demonstrate it. So once you install it, as I have shown here, you can load the package. And so there's a function called Start Lab, and I'm missing it, right? So I need to give it a name. And so there's lab 1 through 9, I believe. I have instructions on each page, but if I want to start lab 1, which is what I would like you to do just to get started before next week, so you can ask questions at next week's meetup, what this will do is create a folder in your current working directory with that name. So you can see now I have a folder called lab 1, and here are my files. The file you're going to work in is this .rmd, which stands for R Markdown. which is really just a plain text file that intermixes, text with R code. This little bit here is you can think of as just metadata. This just tells RStudio a little bit about what the document is. So we want to build to PDF by default, although we could build to HTML. You could go in here and add your name. So I can add my name as the author and save it. Once you do, the first thing I always do when I open an RMD like this is just immediately try to knit. And okay, I don't know if you see this. So it's trying to open a PDF in a new window, which you probably cannot see because it opened in a new window. So that built successfully. So that would be my suggestion to get that, just getting that far in the next few days would be a huge success. As you go through, you can either read it in the PDF, but so you can see there's just text here. You're going to read through this. There's going to be some, exercises as you go through, and you can just, all right, so here's an R chunk. So you have some text, and now here's some R code that you can run interactively. And so just go through this lab. You're going to run through it. And as we get through, it's going to ask you to do some stuff. And so you can add in a new R chunk. So if I need to, if there's a question here, I can say insert R, here's an R chunk. And so if it's asking, hey, how do I do a calculation? I could do 2 + 2. And you just put your answer there. And when I knit, it shows up in the PDF, right? And that's what you're going to upload to Blackboard. Does that make sense? Or is that too quick of an introduction?
That makes sense. Is it a requirement that we use the start lab function for homework assignments?
It's not really, because if you go to the course website, you could go to labs and the templates are here as well. But the convenience of the start lab function is, in this case, the data is in a more file. So you need more than the RMD file. You're going to need like these data files that are going to be read in. I've started to change the lab so that the data all comes in from the data package. So if I say data package equals data 606, you can see I have some data here. A lot of the data comes from a package called Open Intro, right? So I've started to use that. So the first lab has you using something called the Arbuthnot, which is looking at birth rates. So here, instead of loading it from the more file, you could just do Arbuthnot, right? And so then here's my data set, and I can kind of view it and play around with it. So probably for most of the labs, you can just go here and then click, file, save as, and save it as an RMD file. Of course, I'm using Safari and it wants to put a .txt. That might throw you off. But the other thing you can do is here, you can see, here's an HTML version, which might be useful because this first lab, not all the labs, but this lab has some embedded videos that might be helpful. So I try to provide multiple ways for you to get to stuff.
Yeah, I think the reason I asked was because I've done the lab and I followed it with the last example that you just showed.
Yeah.
I basically just created my own RMD file, and then I started adding into it as I went through it. So my version might not look exactly like the template, but it would.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't care about that. Yeah, right. I'm more interested in the answers and you getting through the work. At this point of the program, pretty doesn't matter so much. Maybe in your visualizations, that's one area where creating nice figures, but the document format, don't worry about that yet. You'll get there as you get more comfortable. All right, so I kind of jumped around. I talked about meetups. Here's our tentative schedule. Basically, assignments are due on Sunday. If you're having trouble keeping up, my general philosophy, and Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, is just communication. If you're having issues, reach out. So try to join the Slack channel as soon as you can. That's a great place to ask questions. If you need a private communication, you can email Angela and I. You can do private messages in Slack to Angela and I, and we'll try to get on. We're not going to have formal, like this Wednesday night is kind of our office hours, if you will, but we're going to use it as a combined lecture time. But we can jump on a Zoom, most anytime, and usually within a day or so. happy to do that. Don't spin your wheels too long. Ask questions in Slack. I have found over past semesters. So I started using Slack on the recommendation of students, and now I love it so much. If you throw it in there, like I know inevitably, well, I don't want to jinx anything, but I'm a Mac user and I try to avoid Windows like COVID. And so sometimes people have issues with Windows installation. So that kind of question in Slack is great because I imagine there's some really savvy Windows users here that might, when R went to version 4 last spring, it was kind of over winter time, there were some, or was it last fall? I can't remember. There were some complications, some bugs in the initial version, and a student was able to help me figure it out, which was just fantastic. So anyways, here are our textbooks. So our primary textbook is Daiz and et al., which is an open intro stats. It's a free textbook. The PDF is linked on the course website. If you want a Dead Tree version, I think you can get it on Amazon in color for like $25 or something, $30. And that money goes just back to the organization. So Open Intro is trying to support, kind of open statistics books from high school all the way up. So they have a high school version, et cetera, et cetera. So Minnie, who kind of leads that kind of group now, is just a fantastic person and highly recommend. Danielle Navarro's book is also there, covers a lot of the same topics as Open Intro. So you can look at it as a supplement. So if you read something in Open Intro, it's like, I don't quite get this. You could go to Navarro and kind of get a different perspective. But really, what we're going to leverage is she has a chapter on Bayesian statistics. Bayesian isn't covered in the Open Intro book. And so the very last topic of the course is going to be a very brief introduction of what Bayesian statistics is. And so you can use that chapter from that book. I'll have resources that I'll recommend later. So how are you graded? So the first thing we want you to do before, and I have this linked up, is actually go to DAX. So it's, so I have it here. So if you go to my.dax.net, you create an account. I'd like you to complete, I don't know why I'm getting that, but you can create an account, use your email address, use your CUNY email address, please, and just complete the self-regulated learning assessment. So it should take you about 10 to 15 minutes to complete that assessment. It's just a series of, Likert questions. There are no right and wrong answers. When you get done, you're going to get some feedback in terms of key self-regulatory processes. You're in an online program, so being a good self-regulated learning, I think, is particularly critical in an online program versus a face-to-face where we're going to meet for 3 hours a week. So I would recommend digging through some of the resources, videos. It'll also give you an introduction to what Angela, David, and I are going to be doing. The government gave us $3.8 million to actually test this now at 3 other institutions. And I'll make reference to it throughout the semester because one of the big things we are using DAX for is to predict student success. So we're building these predictive models so we can identify students who are at risk for attrition so that we can provide targeted resources to them to help them be successful. So I'll talk about that throughout the semester. So there's a very big data science component. We actually have a book chapter in press, which actually should be out soon, I think, on how we use predictive modeling in the DAX project. There's also a whole writing assessment thing that we're doing where we're using predictive models to score essays. So if you want to look at the writing prompt, know that if you do it, you're going to get scores or feedback in about a minute. And the reason why you get feedback in about a minute is we're using predictive modeling and behind the scenes to do that. So again, this is you do it or you don't. You get 6 credits for just completing it. Also going to download the data and kind of use it anonymously to teach some of the key statistical topics. So when we talk about some stats topics, it'll be your data, which I think would be kind of cool.
Question on that. So you mentioned using the CUNY email. Is it all right if we already did it with just like our personal email?
Yeah, just send me,
me.
if you could just ping me and Angela with what email address you use so we can.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's fine. Participation is 10%. So how do we get to participation? Completing the 1-minute papers and doing that presentation sign up and, kind of viewing the meetups. Because I think it's important you to be here, we kind of give some credit to that. There's a couple of homework questions for each chapter. Here's the homework page on the website. So here's a PDF. Tried to keep it to about 4 questions, not to overwhelm you. But from here, you can see there's the PDF, and then you can download an R Markdown to just put your answers in there if you wish. If you want to do it by pen and paper and scan it and upload a PDF, I'm fine with that as well. So that's what, 18%. The labs are where I think you get the most value, but we already talked about that a little bit. So, I keep doing that. All right, data project is going to be worth 20%. I don't want to go into this too much. In about a month or so, or 6 weeks, we'll spend some time at a meetup going into detail when we cover enough topics for the project to make sense. There'll be 2 parts. You'll have to do a presentation, or I'm sorry, a proposal, which is like 5 of the 20%, which is really just kind of a terse outline of what you plan to do. So you're going to analyze a data set of your choosing using a method that you're going to learn in this course. The final project will be giving a no more than 10-minute presentation to a group of fellow students. And the way that's structured is we'll set up a spreadsheet kind of about halfway through the semester. Usually have about 6 to 8 slots with 8 students per slot. So you'll have to attend one of them. So you go to one 90-minute session. We'll have some during the day, some in the evening. So you're going to watch a few other students' presentations and do your presentation, so you can kind of see what other students are doing. It has been, I think, a really valuable way. You kind of learn a lot from each other. I learn a lot from you. And so I think that's been a successful way of doing that. Then there is a final exam. That's just kind of a final check. It's on the course schedule. I can't remember exactly when that is, but it's sometime in December. Yeah, and so it's, obviously take home, but you just work on your own in that. Questions about how your grade is determined? Okay. Communication. So we already said Slack. So there's a link. You have to use the particular link. Probably the easiest way right now is on the home page, and you do the welcome to Data 606. You have to click this link, which is a special link that should let you into the Slack channel. Please do it in the next week or so, because then I'll turn it off the ability to get in. In other words, the invitation link will expire in about a week. So do that as soon as you can. That's where we'll make announcements. We'll occasionally use the everyone tag. If you've used Slack before, try to use that sparingly. But if something important comes up, we can do that. Here are Angela and I's email. Now you're going to set up, Angela just got a CUNY EDU, but hopefully this SPS will forward to it. So I don't think you need the SPS anymore. So if you email us, we can set up times to Zoom if you prefer to do something synchronous. If you feel like the email is not a great way to do that, we're happy to do that. I already talked about the software, but here's a slide for you to have it. We talked about that. All right, so what do we want you to do now? Well, let me answer Matt's question first.
I think you might be about to answer it, so I'll just wait a second.
Okay, no worries. So before Monday, or in essence before Monday, complete this Google form. So I'm going to copy the link here. I'm going to throw it in the chat. So this is another little just kind of quick formative assessment for us. So we're asking a little bit about your feelings about mathematics and statistics generally, and then to help a little bit with course planning, just how familiar you are with some key statistical topics. And we'll look at the results of that next week. Really, we're assessment people, so, and particularly formative assessment people. So we want to know where you are. We talked about the DAX, so do that and join the Slack channel. So if you could do that before Monday, you'd be in good shape. And then before September 5th, that's when the first assignments, Lab 1 and Homework 1 are done. But I strongly encourage you to do it before next Wednesday. So if you're having issues, we can address it during next week's meetup. Okay, so yeah, the good question, Alec, about Slack. So you can use any email address you want, and I would use one that you check regularly. I would also encourage you to put Slack on your mobile device if you have it, or at least install the desktop client. I find that even though it's an Electron app, it's convenient. It is not connected with CUNY single sign-on. So we're playing a little outside, although we've gotten the okay to do this. It's substantially easier than Blackboard, and I find the communication to happen much quicker. So you should be able to just click the link and pick any email address that you want and add a new channel. If you're still having issues, maybe we can get on some other time. But yeah, I think you do the invitation, you put in your email address, and then Slack's going to send you an email. You click the link in the email, and then you should be in, I think is how it works. Some people are kind of chiming in as well. Okay. So, oh, wow. Okay. Thanks, Santiago. Other questions?
Two quick ones.
Yeah,
One,
please.
we don't need to fill out the form for tonight's meetup.
The 1 minute paper? No,
Paper. Okay.
no. We'll
And
start that
then,
next week.
do we have to wait for an invite for you to fill out the DAX thing, or can we just fill it out?
No, you can just start filling it out.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
And if you're using anything other than a CUNY email address, send Angela and I what email address do you use on the DAX site. Oh, Alex is in. Great. Any other questions?
Like just for this question on this email address, what if I use my Gmail address, am I expected to look at a CUNY address, email address too, for some emails or information regarding this course or for the DAX purposes?
I will use, because we're going to use Slack primarily. So if I send you like a private message, typically, unless you configure it otherwise, I think the default is you would get an email from Slack saying, hey, Jason sent you a private message, go look at it. So for this course, that way you can use whatever your preferred email address. Anna will be, I would be remiss, and Anna will kind of, be mad at me if I don't mention that you really should be checking your CUNY email address, because all official correspondence from the school and the program will go to your CUNY email address. But for this course, I'm going to, I want to try to meet you where you are, try to, use, I don't want communication to get in the way here. I want to make that as seamless as possible.
Okay, thanks.
So Newman's asking I don't think so. I have like a lot of Slack channels right now, and I think I use the same email address for all of them. So I don't think you need to create a new Slack account. But I don't fully, and maybe someone here can explain it to me.
You basically create a new account for every workspace.
Yeah,
so you can use whatever email you want.
That's kind of what I thought. Yeah. But when I go in with one email address, I can usually see a list of all of the workspaces I've joined previously.
Yeah, so the invite is linked to whatever email you use to sign in, and then each workspace is associated with that email.
Yeah, okay. But you can have, so you can have multiple workspaces with different email addresses in the same app.
Yeah, I think there's like you have to switch between the email. Gets a little confusing. I typically just use one email address.
Yeah, that's what I've done. But I think I have one that's. But yeah, I download the desktop app, so I'm looking now. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 workspaces in my desktop app right now. I usually delete them, like the courses. I create a new one for each semester, and after about a year, I'll drop the old ones. Other questions? Angela, you have anything to add? I know I kind of monopolized the evening.
I think you covered everything, Jason.
All right. I'll hang around for just a minute to see if there's another question.
Could you
Oh.
repeat what you had said about office hours?
Yeah. So we'll always be on Wednesday night here at 8:30, but if you want to meet anytime in between, email Angela and I, and we'll just find a time to get on a Zoom. In my experience, I assume you're all, most of you are probably working professionals or have complicated lives. Saying we're going to be on from 12 to 1 on Fridays just seems kind of silly. Like, why wait to Friday to get your question answered? So, but if that's something that you prefer, email me and we'll have a conversation.
Okay.
And there's no physical space, right? Because, well, theoretically, I would be in this, I have an office in Manhattan on 34th Street, but I'm not going because of COVID. So for us at SPS, it's this semester because we've been doing, we're an online program. So if we can't do things remotely, then we have a big problem. It just doesn't make sense right now. We seem to work just as well remotely. But yeah, it's in some future time, I may have office hours where you could physically walk into an office, but right now that's not possible.
Quick question.
Mhm.
Sorry if I missed this. Link to the current course notes we're looking at now for the lecture notes.
So what will happen is by tomorrow morning on the home page, there'll be a introduction. There'll be a thing here. There'll be a link to the slides. I usually put a link here in this column too, which will link to the page where you can get them. So it's late. So sometimes I can get it posted the same night, but I don't know if you've had to do Zoom recordings. As soon as I click stop, or I end the meeting, Zoom has to convert the video, then it has to be uploaded to YouTube, and then it has to be published. And sometimes I'm too tired to wait for that to happen, and I'll do it in the morning.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Curious, how many people are not in the Eastern time zone? Right. Can you pronounce your
Me.
name? Is it Marquillo? Mauricio?
Mauricio.
Soft C, Mauricio. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm actually 12 hours ahead of New York City.
Oh, so you're living in the future.
Yes, which means that deadlines are sort of shifted for me.
Yeah, I think, well, on the schedule page, I have this link to create that has an iCal. And I think I attached a time zone. If I didn't, you can tell me I didn't and I can fix it. Because that iCal is actually created through an R script. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll stop the recording and we'll see everybody next Wednesday and hopefully on the Slack channel soon.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
a
for
lot.
those who turned on your cameras. It is really nice to see faces. So thank you.
Central, so we got somebody in Central Time. Any West Coast people? Usually you have some people from Silicon Valley. Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.